The evening sun dipped slowly behind the maple trees, painting the suburban neighborhood in hues of amber and gold. Emily Johnson leaned against her porch railing, a glass of iced tea in her hand, staring at the quiet street. She always liked this hour of the day, the moment when the world seemed to exhale, when parents returned home from work, when children abandoned their bikes on driveways, and when silence began to tiptoe into the air. Her next-door neighbor, Daniel Miller, had just pulled into his driveway. He stepped out of his truck with that familiar, easygoing smile, his sandy blonde hair falling over his forehead as he balanced a box of groceries in his arms. Emily tried not to notice the way his shirt clung to his frame or the calm confidence in his stride, but she failed miserably. They had been neighbors for nearly 3 years now. Emily and her husband, Mark, had moved into the neighborhood during a time when their marriage already carried cracks. Daniel had been there long before. He lived alone in the house his late parents had left him. And though their friendship had always been casual, something about Daniel had a way of softening her loneliness. "Evening, Emily," Daniel called out, shifting the box in his arms as he caught her staring. "Evening," she replied with a smile, a little embarrassed. "Need help with that?" "Only if you don't mind saving me from dropping everything on my driveway," he chuckled. Emily set her glass down and crossed the yard, stepping onto his side of the fence as naturally as if she had always belonged there. She took one side of the box, their hands brushing briefly, sending an unexpected spark through her chest. They carried the groceries inside together. Daniel's house was neat but lived in. The faint smell of cedar and coffee lingered in the air. Emily set the box down on the counter and glanced around. She had been here only a handful of times before, always under practical excuses, borrowing tools, returning mail, helping with his garden. But tonight, the silence between them felt thicker, charged in a way that made her heart beat faster. "You didn't have to help," Daniel said softly, pulling out the groceries. "You didn't have to carry them all in one trip," she teased back, trying to hide the nervous energy bubbling inside her. They both laughed, but then the laughter faded into something quieter. Their eyes met across the counter, and for a moment neither of them looked away. It was the kind of moment that sneaks up on you, the kind that tests the line between friendship and something more. Emily broke eye contact first, clearing her throat. "So, planning another one of your famous backyard barbecues?" Daniel grinned. "Maybe, but only if you promise to make that potato salad again. Last time, it was the first thing gone." She smiled, warming at his compliment. "Deal." The conversation drifted easily, as it always did with him. They talked about little things, the new neighbors who had moved in down the street, the upcoming town fair, the way summer seemed to stretch and shrink all at once. Time passed unnoticed until Emily realized how late it had gotten. "I should head back," she said reluctantly. "Mark will be home soon." Daniel's expression flickered, almost imperceptibly, before he nodded. "Of course. Thanks for the help, Emily." She smiled, but as she walked back into the cooling night air, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them. The days that followed seemed ordinary on the surface, but Emily felt a quiet storm brewing beneath her skin. Every time she saw Daniel, mowing his lawn, walking his dog, leaning against his truck, she felt the weight of that unspoken moment between them. One Saturday afternoon, Mark had left for a business trip, leaving Emily alone for the weekend. She spent the day tidying up, trying not to think too much about her restless heart. That evening, as the sun began to set, she found herself sitting on her porch again. Daniel was outside too, leaning against his fence. Their eyes met, and without words, he gestured toward his backyard fire pit. "Want to join me?" he called out. She hesitated, but only for a moment. "Sure," she said, walking over. The fire crackled softly as they sat in 2 wooden chairs, the flames casting shadows across their faces. The night was warm, the stars peeking out above them. They talked about music, books, and old childhood stories. Emily found herself laughing more than she had in months. But as the night grew deeper, their words grew quieter. At one point, Daniel leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. "You ever feel like life sometimes boxes you in? Like you're doing everything you're supposed to, but it still feels like something's missing?" Emily froze, because he had just put into words what she had been feeling for years. Yes, she whispered. All the time. Their eyes met again, and this time Emily didn't look away. The silence between them thickened, charged with everything unspoken. Daniel's hand reached out, hesitating for a second before resting gently over hers. The world seemed to pause. The fire crackled, the stars blinked above them, but in that moment, it was only them, two people caught in the dangerous beauty of connection when no one else was watching. Emily's heart pounded. She knew the weight of what this meant, knew the lines they were treading, but she didn't pull her hand away. Instead, she let it stay there, savoring the warmth, the comfort, the undeniable truth that she felt more seen in that moment than she had in years. Emily, Daniel said softly, his voice almost a plea. She closed her eyes for a second, breathing in the night air, then looked back at him. I know, she whispered. I feel it too. Neither of them moved further, but the gravity between them was undeniable. Over the weeks that followed, the bond between Emily and Daniel grew stronger. They didn't cross boundaries, but they lived in the quiet intimacy of glances, of shared laughter, of lingering silences that said more than words ever could. One evening, as they worked together in his garden, Emily asked, "Do you ever regret not leaving this town?" Daniel wiped the sweat from his brow and looked at her thoughtfully. Sometimes. But then if I had left, I wouldn't have met you. Her breath caught at the simplicity of his words. She smiled faintly, trying to ignore how much they meant to her. It was dangerous, this closeness. She knew it. He knew it. And yet neither of them could step away. What happened between them when no one was watching wasn't about grand gestures or reckless decisions. It was about the small things, the way his voice softened when he spoke her name, the way she felt lighter in his presence, the way their hands brushed just enough to feel alive again. It was about finding pieces of themselves they thought they had lost. The turning point came one rainy evening. Thunder rumbled in the distance as Emily stood by her window, watching the storm roll in. She saw Daniel's lights flicker, then go out completely. Without thinking, she grabbed an umbrella and ran across the yard, knocking on his door. He opened it with a flashlight in hand, surprised but smiling. "Power's out. You okay?" "I'm fine," she said, her hair damp from the rain. "I just thought, maybe you could use some company." They ended up sitting in his living room with candles lit, the storm raging outside. The atmosphere felt surreal, intimate, as though the world had been reduced to just the two of them.